Hi, welcome to the November update at Control and Compound. Let's dig into it. Hey, Christina, how you doing today?
Hey Darren, I am doing great. I cannot believe that we are doing a November update right now, but here we are.
It's crazy. The weather just turned in the past week. Got a little cold, so hopefully when you're listening to this, it's warm again. But yeah, November, summer over. We're next month is Christmas. Crazy.
Yeah, it just time flies when you're having fun, right?
All right. All right. So let's dig into monthly update. What's going on? We'll start right with the Bank of Canada. On October 25th, the Bank of Canada met and said, we are going to hold interest rates. So they held it at 5% after raising the cost of borrowing 10 times in the past year. They're going to hold it at 5. Not a decrease, not going up, kind of what was expected. But inflation's the primary thing they say they're looking at. So, Christina, what's going on with inflation?
Yeah, so we've got some numbers in for inflation, and in the month of September, inflation came in at a 3.8%. What they're really looking for is a 2%, which is why they've been increasing those interest rates and why we've seen them go up. So we did see a decline in inflation, not quite what they want to see though. So I wouldn't expect that it stays this way, but Canadians are really feeling it at this point, right? So we look at, I was bringing up some stats, and that word recession is popping up more and more in the news, and it's all coming down to that GDP, right? So the reasoning why we're seeing, why we're hearing that recession word more and more is that if we look at the last couple quarters, the growth was flat. Like we were up a little bit, but then we are down a little bit, up a little bit, down a little bit. So really kind of flat on that side of things. We haven't gotten September's numbers out just yet, but they are, we are on trend for that. So that is, by definition, if we've got two quarters like that, we are in a recession. So for them to make an increase as we are talking about that recession, we're seeing that recession, knowing full well that a lot of that increase in inflation is geared towards our housing because of these interest rates. There's just a lot going on up there, right? There's a lot going on. It's not really positive. They're holding things. I don't know for how long though.
Yeah, it's interesting. This 2% inflation. I understand the rationale behind, or 2% target for inflation for the Bank of Canada. I just don't know, with the significant increase in housing costs and in rents, how we get to that 2% unless there's some drastic changes. Because if housing's up, we know how much housing's up. That's really going to skew the numbers. And it's interesting to see how the Canadian and U.S. numbers you're kind of seeing a spread. How the U.S. is doing better in the GDP than us. I mean, you talk flat GDP, multiply that by, think of all the new Canadians that are coming. We're bringing in more people, and GDP is how much each person produces. Each person times the number they produce. So for the GDP to be flat, and we're an increasing population, those aren't good signals. And then, I talked about the U.S. Canadian difference, the Canadian dollar. Following the announcement, the Canadian dollar dropped to about 72 cents. So the U.S. GDP was 4.9% in the third quarter of 2023. So the U.S. Canadian, we're seeing a spread here, and the Canadian dollar is dropping. And I really don't see how they could drop the Canadian, or they could drop interest rates compared to the U.S. without even having a further impact on that Canadian dollar. So it's going to be an interesting next couple quarters anyway.
Yeah, like both ways don't seem to lead in the right direction. With the interest rates, they go up. That's going to just put the inflation back up. They go down. They're going to crash that loonie. It's not looking good, which is why the recession word's out there. So the next thing I want to talk about is, what does that mean for borrowers? And this one hit me. This one hit me directly this week when I'm doing some refinancing on a property, and they sent over the list of, okay, you've got to pick for a portion. You've got to pick a locked in rate for a portion of the refinance, and they sent over the list for me to choose from. I'm going to tell you that list, it was, it wasn't It was a tough one. 1 year, so listen to this list. So 1 year fixed was 7.89, 2 year 7.49, 3 year 6.89, 4 year 6.89, and 5 year 6.49. Like that's tough, right? Like and I definitely think things are going to be changing in the next 1 to 2 years, but you're looking at these two and you're like, there's no good choice here.
There's no good choice.
Yeah. So for borrowers, it's definitely getting more costly, right? We're seeing that. Well, we know we're seeing it. We're seeing it with the inflation rates, with the price of housing and everything else. And I do think for a lot, like, prepare yourself if you've got renewals coming up in the next year, and I would even say 2 years at this point. Prepare yourself for these numbers too, because I don't think they're going anywhere quickly with everything else that we've kind of talked about that's happening out there in the world too.
Yeah, I mean, question we get every day is, my mortgage is coming up. How long should I lock in for? Should I just lock in for 6 months, a year, 2 years? And it's an easy answer. Just tell me what interest rates are going to be in a year or two, and I'll tell you what you should do. But it's again, the five year mortgage is lower than the 1 year mortgage, so that leads me to believe that they think the interest rates are coming down long term, but who knows? We're skating on thin ice right now in Canada as far as falling through the ice and having a big recession, having a big correction. So it's going to be an interesting couple months.
Yeah, we've got another announcement coming up in December, so we'll see how that kind of plays out. But I definitely know, even in talking to people regularly and seeing changes in shopping habits and things like that, it's Canadians are truly feeling it now, right? Like there's no hiding from it anymore. It's hitting on all sides.
Yeah, when those interest rates increased, it takes a while to work through the economy, and you got to remember the Americans, they have 30-year mortgages. So you got an awful lot of Americans that either don't have a mortgage, have mortgages at 30 years fixed, locked in at 3-4% or under. It's not impacting them as much as it is in Canada, where typically if every 5 years people are renewing, people are starting to see those renewal now, and it hurts. And then from a real estate investor standpoint, that slightly positive cash flow on some properties is turning into a negative cash flow. So it's a tough time to borrow money. In the stock markets, the U.S. markets, the S&P 500, they're up about 10% year to date. Now, lots of volatility. It's bouncing up and down. And again, we're seeing the discrepancies between Canada and the U.S. U.S. up 10%, Canada flat for the year. So the TSX is flat or down about 1% for the year, depending on what day you're looking at. So slightly negative in Canada and about a 10% growth in the U.S. But Bitcoin, I hope everyone remembered on January 1st of this year when I said, take all your life savings and put it all in Bitcoin. No, I didn't say that. I don't believe that. But I wish I had of. Bitcoin's up 112% year to date and 74% in the past year. So Bitcoin's around $34,000 when we're recording this. So significant increase in Bitcoin. Again, it's volatile. Do your homework. Not saying it's going to continue to grow, but for those of you in Bitcoin, and I'll tell you the other interesting thing for Canadians in Bitcoin, because the Canadian dollar has dropped fairly significantly against the US dollar, typically Bitcoin's priced in US dollars. So if you bought it last year, did the conversion to buy the US dollars to buy Bitcoin, well, not only did you see a huge increase in the price of Bitcoin, but you actually made money on the currency spread as well, as Canadian dollars aren't as valuable as they were. So those American-based Bitcoin, if you cash them out today, now again, not saying dollar's gonna stay like that forever, but it's an interesting, if you're looking at your statement, Bitcoin's up even more with the dollar exchange.
And I had a couple of people ask me, is Darren super happy about the Bitcoin? Like, chat with people. And I was like, oh, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is.
Well, it's like everything. I wish I had bought more. It's like real estate. Well, why didn't I buy everything 5 years ago? Everything possibly for sale, but who? 2020 hindsight.
Yeah. So talking of real estate, got a little bit of an update on the real estate market out there. The Canadian Real Estate Association did put out their forecast this past month for what the remaining, what 2023 is going to wrap up like, what 2024 is going to look like. And they had some interesting stats that I just wanted to share. They said about 449,000 residential properties are forecasted to trade hands through the MLS system in 2023. So that's actually seems like a lot, but it's a 9.8% decline from 2022. So house sales have dropped across Canada by close to 10% when they're looking at what the year's going to finish out like. The national average home price is forecasted to decline by 3.3% on an annual basis. So it's about 680,000 in 2023 is what your average price across, and we're talking average across Canada. Obviously, different provinces will be different where you are, but this was their report. Now, in talking about the average home price, with the forecast to regain a modest 1.5 in 2023 to 2024, coming in at 690. So they're saying that, this year we're looking at 680 for the average home price. Next year, we're going to go up a little bit at 690. But we hear about a lot of volatility, but if we look back in the last 4 years, they're saying that the average home price has consistently been between 680 and 700,000. So yes, we're feeling the volatility right now, and you see those ups and downs with it, but over a long period, 680 to 700 is not a huge swing in the real estate market. I don't know what, and that's what they're predicting for 2024 too, right? And I'm thinking that's where we're going to see the worst of it from what we've already talked about today. So if that's all we're seeing, I still feel like real estate's a pretty solid investment. Not as much volatility as what we've seen in Bitcoin by any means in the last year. They also talked about, and we're hearing this more and more, people are getting away from the Ontario investing and they're looking at places like Alberta, New Brunswick, going to the States. So they did say that prices in Alberta are expected to outperform the rest of Canada in 2024. So they've got a forecast gain of about 4.8%. Compared to what we saw in 2023. And that's in contrast to the Ontario forecast, which is they're predicting no growth in Ontario for 2024. So again, these are all forecasts. We don't know exactly what everything's going to play out like, but it's not, we say that there's swings, but when you actually look at the numbers, they're not huge, right? It's not a negative 20 situation.
Well, depends what region of the country you're in. Certainly, there's regions that have just skyrocketed in price. But then you throw in a mortgage of 6 or 7 versus a mortgage of 2, and your numbers just get totally out of whack from a cash flow perspective. So challenging times, but yeah, long term, we're still confident real estate's a great place. But it's all about strategic or properly bought real estate. It's not. We don't for a second believe every real estate deal is a good deal. You really got to be careful these days and watch your numbers with the high price of borrowing. Well,
yeah, we talk about real estate where you want it to do more than, why you're in it is to do more than one job. Really, hopefully, most people structured for the cash flow. That's something I think a lot of people are learning right now is that, cash flow is king when it comes to real estate investing. But it is nice when you look at these stats to know that your equity is not going, our other job of appreciation is still happening, right? It might be a little bit slow, but we're not taking a massive backward swing or anything like that. So, and that's why we have it doing more than one job.
Yeah,
like we always talk about.
Great point, Christina. Appreciation is just one of the 6 jobs. We talk about what your dollar can do within the real estate, and then of course infinite banking multiplies those jobs. Kind of sticking with real estate, we're going to revisit the home buyers account. So let's talk about that. So we've got some insurance companies now getting involved in this. The home buyers account, we talked about it once previously in a podcast, and we didn't pump it up as that a lot, saying, you buy $1 million house, you can put $8,000, what is it, 8,000 up to 40,000, Christina? So
it's
for 5 years?
8,000 per year up to a maximum of 40,000 we can put into these accounts.
Yeah, and we had feedback, and I'll take this constructive criticism. It was someone that came back and said, well, if you're buying a $500,000 house, a 5% down is $25,000. Very valid point. So we get a lot more details on the home buyer account now. Tax-wise, if you're young and you've never bought a home before, that $8,000 a year that you can put in up to a maximum of 40,000, that is tax deductible, okay? Like similar to an RSP, where an RSP is tax deferred, but same idea. You're going to get a tax break on your taxes that year. And then if that first home you buy in the first 15 years qualifies for what they consider a first-time home buy, then that money comes out of the account tax-free. So you get a tax deduction going in, tax-free coming out. So it's almost like the RSP deduction, but the TFSA tax-free when you withdraw it. So yeah, Christina, we think any young person that's looking to buy a house, just clarify what's going to qualify as a house. So if you're looking to buy a 4-unit building as your first home, well, you got to check to make sure what's going to qualify and what's not going to qualify.
Yeah, I when we first talked about it, I was just like, it's not going to fix the housing crisis, which I still stand firm. It's not going to fix the housing crisis. But the more I dug into it and got information for clients and whatnot, I do feel that it can be a very impactful product, especially for young individuals that are trying to save for their first home. When you're younger, you don't have a ton of tax-free savings account room. It has to accumulate. You don't start with all that. You have to build it up. That might be a place where individuals are saving. This is going to be much, much better, right? So if you've got money in that TFSA right now, and it is specifically for a first purchase of a home, utilize this account, right? Because you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to get that tax deduction, and you're going to have more room because they are giving you $8,000. Another thing to keep in mind with that room growth is it doesn't start until you open the account. So even if you just open the account this year and put a small amount in, that's going to give that $8,000 room for you this year. And then next year you could turn around and top it back up. So it does, the sooner you open these, the sooner your room starts to grow. And yeah, if you're working now, you get that tax deduction, you use it for the first time home purchase. Like, it is good. Like, I think it can work for a lot of younger Canadians that are trying to, save for their first house in a tax efficient environment. And it will make an impact. I still don't think it's going to fix the housing crisis, but I definitely think it's going to help some younger Canadians and first time home buyers purchase that first home, which is great.
Yeah, and then the other thing, there's a lot of places now across the country. Historically, it was Toronto and Vancouver, but now we're seeing it across the country where we do see parents and grandparents helping the kids buy their first house. So again, talk to your accountant and all that. But if your child's not making any income, well, they're not going to get a tax deduction anyway. But if you have a child in early 20s or something, or just 19, and they're out working full time and they have a decent income, and a parent decides they're going to help fund the first home purchase, well, to start one of these and be able to get the tax deduction, if to gift the money to the kid and the kid puts it in, to get the tax deduction on top of that, that's going to help the kid actually save some more money, maybe take that tax return you get back and put that towards the house as well. So you get a little government help. If you're going to gift your money to the kids anyway, maybe give it to them to put in their home buyer's account, and then the kids will get a tax break, and no difference for the parents. So again, a couple different strategies you can look at that, but if you're a first-time home buyer, you want to be a first-time home buyer, or you want your kids to be, something you should investigate a little more. And then on to CNC News, Christina, what's going on at Control and Compound?
So this past month, if you didn't have a chance to check it out, we were on the Let's Get Real Estate podcast with Danielle Chasson. So that's out there. If you haven't heard it, we encourage you to go and check it out. Danielle's great. We're hoping to have her on our podcast soon so you can meet her and listen too. But for now, definitely head over and check out that podcast on her platform. Let's Get Real Estate is the name of it. The other exciting news that we have is that we're excited to announce that we're going to be heading to Calgary in February for Ken Dunn's Real Estate Summit that he's holding out there. So we went to, and Darren presented, you presented at the Real Estate Summit in Toronto in September, and we met so many amazing, great people. He's holding the same type of event in Calgary, February 15th to 18th. I don't think, hasn't really been announced for tickets and whatnot yet, but we'll make sure we get all that information out to individuals as it comes out. But we're going to be there, and Darren, you're going to be doing another presentation for the individuals at West, so that's super exciting.
Yeah, we're excited to go to Calgary and meet a bunch of clients while we're out there and new faces. And it's called the Real Estate Investor Summit. And the one in Toronto was fantastic, and I'm sure the one in Calgary is going to be even better. So for any of you in the Calgary area, in the western area, or those of you that can make the travel, highly encourage you to check out this conference. We'll have a link when the tickets become available. We'll have a link that we'll send out to people. And then podcast, Christina.
Yeah, so podcast last month, we had a great lineup. For our guest, we had Mark Yatako, and he was on talking about renovations for real estate investors. So a really big, important part in real estate investing is that lift and doing those renos. So he had all kinds of tips and tricks for us on picking the right contractors, where you can save money, where you can make money in renovations. So that was great. One that went pretty viral this month. We kind of planned that because we did do a little follow-up from our first one. But the dirty little secrets of CPP and OAS part 2. So that one, if you haven't checked it out, go back and check it out and read through those comments too. They're fun. People had a lot to say. People got a lot of opinions on this stuff. I enjoy reading it, so I'm sure you will too. We also had Becoming Your Own Banker Part 4, so continued that Nelson Nash, the review of the book, going through that information. We had a big lineup. We had Manulife Vitality, so we can now add Vitality to our participating whole life policies. That one's pretty cool if you're interested in learning more about a program that rewards, or a life insurance program that rewards you for being healthy. You're going to want to check that out. And then just this past week, we had group insurance come out, which if you are a business owner and you have been considering group benefits, or if you have group benefits and just kind of want to know a little bit more about them and how they work, go back and check out that podcast because it was done specifically for you guys.
Perfect. And then this month, I'm excited. We have Jillian Irving coming out. She does student rentals, and I got to tell you, before we talked to her, I was like, never in a million years will I do student rentals. Their students are going to trash the place. It's going to be terrible. All the headaches. And then after talking to Jillian at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I want to do student rentals. Just amazing real life examples of how much cash flow she's getting in some properties, what she looks for when she buys, how she sets it up to be hassle-free, damage-free. Really nice formula. Jillian's really impressive on the student rentals, so that's going to come out this month. We get another Bitcoin series coming out this month. And then we've got a podcast on taxes, specifically, do the wealthy pay enough in taxes? So we're going to dig into the numbers and look at tax rates across the country. We're going to compare provinces, and we're going to talk about who pays what in taxes and what is fair. All right, that's the update for November. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And if you want more information, check out our website, controllandcompound.com, and you can sign up for an education session with one of our wealth coaches.